There's a lot of scriptures in the Bible where the Israelites captured women, girls, virgins, and raped them. But it doesn't specifically say that it was Jehovah that told them to do that, to rape them. One of the worst ones is Numbers chapter 31, where Jehovah told Moses to go into Midian and to kill all the men, women, and little boys, but to keep the little girls for themselves. And technically, you can't say that Jehovah told them to rape those girls, because it doesn't come right out and say that. But there's other scriptures too where the Israelites they would take these women by force, but it doesn't say that Jehovah told them to do it. So technically, you could say that in those scriptures you can't say that Jehovah told them, or that Jehovah endorsed slavery, or that Jehovah endorsed rape. But there is one particular passage in the Bible that does, where Jehovah actually does endorse rape. And the Watchtower doesn't really know how to deal with it. Basically what they do is they leave out this is Deuteronomy chapter 21 and verse 14. And you can look at every single one of the indexes that the Watchtower puts out, and you're not going to find anything about Deuteronomy 21 verse 14. They'll talk about 10 through 13, and they make excuses for that. But when it comes to Deuteronomy 21 verse 14, you will not see in any one of the indexes where they actually talk about Deuteronomy 21:14. Now I'm going to read 21 starting in verse 10, and I'm going to read all the way through verse 14. And then we'll see the different ways that Watchtower tries to explain away these scriptures where this is part of the Mosaic law that he gave to Moses to give to the nation of Israel, where he actually endorsed rape. And this is starting in verse 10. It says, "In case you go out to the battle against your enemies, and Jehovah your God has given them into your hand, and you have carried them away captive, and you have seen among the captives a girl beautiful in form, and you have got attached to her and taken her for your wife, you must then bring her into the midst of your house. She must now shave her head and attend to her nails, and remove the mantle of her captivity from off her, and dwell in your house, and weep for her father and her mother a whole lunar month. And after that you should have relations with her, and you must take possession of her as your bride, and she must become your wife." Now this is verse 14 is what Watchtower will never discuss. It says, "And it must occur that if you have found no delight in her, you must then send her away, agreeably to her own soul. But you must by no means sell her for money. You must not deal tyrannically with her after you have humiliated her." So it says that he can use and abuse her. She didn't have any choice in this. She was taken captive. She was not given a choice in this. So when he's used and abused her and gotten sick of her, he can just let her go. He doesn't have to divorce her or anything. There's nothing in here about a divorce. He just lets her go, kicks her out, because he's sick of her. He's abused her and used her, and he's sick of her, so he just kicks her out. And then he can't sell her because he's humiliated her. So he's abused her and used her, and he can't sell her because he's humiliated her. This wasn't her choice, and this is part of the Mosaic law. Jehovah told this to Moses to give to the nation of Israel. So Jehovah definitely made laws here that these men, if they wanted to have a girl, all they had to do was they had to go out to war with these people. And if he saw a girl that he thought was really beautiful, he'd take her. And he'd take her home and he'd use her, abuse her, and then the only law that Jehovah gave them was he couldn't sell her because he humiliated her. In other words, he abused her. He raped her. That's part of the Mosaic law that Jehovah gave to the nation of Israel. So how does Watchtower deal with this? Basically, it's because, like I said before, you can look in every single index, which I have from 1935 on, and you will not see any reference to Deuteronomy 21 verse 14. You're not going to see it because they won't talk about that. They will talk about the rest of it like it's okay for these Israelites to have taken these women. Like there's no rape in this, not the way the society looks at it. They don't look at this like they did anything wrong. Now, this is from the 1952 Watchtower, September 1st, and it's questions to the readers. And it says Deuteronomy, this is on page 543. Deuteronomy 21, 10 through 13 shows that the Israelite men could marry foreign captive women, yet other texts forbid intermarriage with foreigners. Is this not contradictory? Doesn't say anything about rape. Just can they marry them? They're not even dealing with the fact that these women had no choice in it. Okay, their answer. Jehovah gives the reason for the general prohibition concerning foreign wives as follows. They would turn your sons from following me to serving alien gods. Also, divine warning was sounded against the marrying your sons to their daughters, who will desert to their gods and make your sons desert also. The prohibition was based on no racial prejudice nor any nationalistic grounds, but it was solely for the purpose of protecting the Israelites from religious condemnation. It was to avoid contacts that might jeopardize the purity of worship rendered to Jehovah. So their prohibition against marrying foreign women was so that they wouldn't get involved in their false worship, basically, is what it's saying. But notice how notice how the special circumstances involved in the case discussed in Deuteronomy 21, 10 through 13. Now notice, it doesn't say 14. It says 10 through 13. Eliminate this danger of condemnation. When thou shalt go forth to war against thine enemies, and Yahweh their God shall deliver them into the hand, and thou shalt take them captive, and shalt see among the captives a woman of beautiful figure, and shalt have a desire unto her, and wouldst take her take her to thee to wife, then shalt thou bring her into the midst of thy house, and she shall shave her head and pare her nails, and put away the raiment of her captivity from off her, and shall remain in thy house, and bewail her father and her mother for the space of a month. And after that mayst go thou in unto her, and be her husband, and she shall be thy wife. She shall cut off her hair, which was the usual sign of mourning. She shall cut her nails close, which would remove this means of adornment, since they were stained to be attractive, or she should let them grow to become unkept, or should she let them grow to become unkept, without their usual manicured attractiveness. She put off the raiment in which she was taken captive, since the women of defeated forces put on their finest dresses and ornaments in the hope of finding favor in the eyes of their captors. For a month she was in mourning, bewailing the loss of her loved ones, thus possibly indicating the thoroughness of the war's destructiveness at the time of her capture. The captive women were possibly the only survivors, and the heathen gods were doubtless destroyed by the Israelite warriors. So no ties were left with the pagan nation, either socially or religiously. There were no heathen in-laws for the Israelite men to mix in with. Hence, to marry a foreign woman so completely severed from the connection with foreign gods and false worshippers was permissible. It was quite different from marrying a foreign woman, not a captive, whose relatives were living, whose religious gods were still worshipped by her family, who would from time to time have some contact with her heathen relatives and their gods, and who might bring her Israelite husband into contact with them, also thereby exposing his pure worship to contamination. So it was the special circumstances of Deuteronomy 21, 10 through 13 that allowed for an exception to the general prohibition of intermarriage with foreign women. So basically what it's saying was, it's okay to marry them as long as their families were dead, so that they couldn't be contaminated with their false worship. Doesn't talk about verse 14 though. Isn't that curious? Don't talk about 14 where it says they can't divorce them. They can't sell them because they humiliated these women like they had a choice. Now let's go to the November 15th, 1954 Watchtower. And the article, this is the sacredness of our warfare, and it's on page 690. Let's see what it has to say. Paragraph 14. The camp of Jehovah's theocratic nation therefore differed from that of the pagan armies. The pagans would take women along with them, that the warriors might indulge themselves with them, or on capturing a place the soldiers were given free rein to seize the womenfolk and rape them. I'm going to read that again. Paragraph 18. The camp of Jehovah's theocratic nation therefore differed from that of the pagan armies. The pagans would take women along with them, that the warriors might indulge themselves with them, or on capturing a place, the soldiers were given free rein to seize the womenfolk and rape them. Now, what does Deuteronomy 21, starting verse 10 say? In case you go out to battle against your enemies, and Jehovah your God has given them into your hand, and you have carried them away captive, and you have seen among the captives a woman beautiful in appearance, and you have got attached to her and taken her for your wife, you must then bring her into the midst of your house, and she must now shave her head and attend to her nails, and remove the mantle of her captivity from off her, and dwell in your house, and weep for her father and her mother a whole lunar month. And after that you should have relations with her, and you must take possession of her as your bride, and she must become your wife. And it must occur that if you have found no favor in her, you must send her away agreeably to her own soul, but you must by no means sell her for money. You must not deal tyrannically with her after you have humiliated her. What is that? Is that not the same? It says the camp of Jehovah's theocratic nation therefore differed from that of the pagan armies. The pagans would take women along with them, that the warriors might indulge themselves with them, or on capturing a place the soldiers were given free rein to seize the womenfolk and rape them. Is that not exactly what is described here in Deuteronomy chapter 21? Going on in that article, paragraph 19. If the Israelites were commanded to capture a place and kill off the men and the women that were not virgins, they were not free to rape the girls who they preserved alive. It says they were not free to rape the girls who were preserved alive. What does Deuteronomy 21, 10 through 14 describe? Just because they had them in the house for a month? Now it's not rape? It goes on. That would have been defiling the army, for it would have been committing fornication, immorality. If any Israelite wanted any captive maid, he could not have relations with her immediately on capturing her? No, but he must keep himself sanctified for theocratic warfare by following the law that said, in case you should go out to the battle against your enemies, and Jehovah your God has given them into your hand, and you have carried them away captive, and you have seen among the captives a beautiful woman in form, and you have gotten attached to her and taken her for your wife, then you must bring her into the midst of your house. She must now shave her head and attend her nails, and remove the garments from her captivity from off her, and dwell in your house, and weep for her father and her mother a whole month. And after that you should have relations with her, and you must take possession of her, your bride, and she must become your wife. Deuteronomy 21, 10 through 13. Again, they leave out verse 14 on purpose. They knew exactly what they were doing when they wrote these articles. They left out Deuteronomy 21:14 on purpose. They knew exactly what they were doing. Going on. Until the military campaign was over and sanctity had been maintained, this sexual contact could not occur with divine approval. Could not be maintained with divine approval until a military campaign was over? Then it had divine approval, according to this. Okay, going on. If a man called to the army was engaged to a girl, he was relieved of his army obligations for 1 year, that he might go home and take his betrothed one in marriage and have a child by her, that he might have an offspring and keep his name alive, that thus he might not be killed in a battle childless. Going on. Of course, the legal covenant that Jehovah made with the ancient Israelites through Moses does not apply today to Christians, and hence the Christian battlers are not required to abstain from intercourse with their wives because they are in a sacred warfare. Nonetheless, their conduct must be clean and morally and spiritually. They're keeping themselves from immorality and also from spiritual adultery by being a part of the world must befit the sacredness of this Christian warfare. Their part in the vindication of Jehovah is at stake and furnishes them a cleansing influence and impulse to purity morally and spiritually. So according to the Watchtower in 1954, it was perfectly fine as long as they didn't have intercourse with them right away. It was fine. It wasn't rape at all, as long as they didn't do it right away. Now let's see what they do. Let's see how they do it now. That was, like 70 years ago. Let's see how they deal with that scripture now. It's on inside book number 1 on page 655, and it's at the bottom of the page here. It says right and wrong view of dress. Now here they blame it on the girls that got captured. They blame it on them because of the way they dressed, believe it or not. That's how they deal with it today, that scripture in Deuteronomy 21:10 through 14. But again, they leave out verse 14 purposely. Right and wrong view of dress. Jehovah's people are told not to be unduly anxious about having sufficient clothing. The Christian woman is warned not to let expensive, showy dress or style be the thing that she seeks, but rather to let her clothing be modest, yet well arranged, showing soundness of mind. She should therefore give attention to her dress, but should put the primary stress on the apparel of a quiet and mild spirit. Yet the wise writer of Proverbs describes a good wife as seeing that her family is well clothed, industriously making garments with her own hands. This is where it gets interesting. On the other hand, many women of Bible times used their attire as a means of gaining their selfish objectives. It was a custom for women of pagan cities, when about to be captured by the enemy, to put on their finest apparel in order to attract soldiers who might take them as wives. But in case a captive woman was taken by an Israelite soldier, she was required to set aside her items of dress, some of which might be connected with pagan religion, before he could marry her. After Israel had fallen into many idolatrous and immoral practices, Jehovah condemned the women of the nation who haughtily garbed and decorated themselves in order to attract men, even men of other nations, and who decked themselves with the ornaments of false religion. That is how Watchtower deals with Deuteronomy 21:10 through 14 now. They, according to this, these girls who were taken captive asked for it because they were attracted. They thought, oh wow, even though my family are all being murdered and slaughtered, and even though I'm being taken against my will, I'm going to dress up real pretty so that somebody wants to take me as a wife, because these people are just so attractive. I want to be with them. Of course, they got Deuteronomy 21:10 through 13. Again, they leave out verse 14 on purpose. What is their view today? What is their view today? This is Jehovah's law to the nation of Israel, that when they were in war, that they could take, if they saw a beautiful girl, they could take that girl home. They could use her and abuse her as long as they wanted to. When they got sick and tired of her, she wasn't good enough anymore, they'd just kick her out. There was no divorce. There was nothing like that. It was rape. It was out and out rape. But how did the society deal with that? Oh, it wasn't rape because they took her home first for a month. That's how they deal with that? It wasn't rape because they took her home for a month? So she's what, 13 years old? And they don't have sex with her for a month? And now it's not rape. That's how the society deals with that. Now how do they deal with it? If you're an idiot enough to look at this scripture, and you go to the index and you look up this, what they say here, and you go to the index book, are you going to believe that it was that these girls, 13 and 14 years old, that you're going to blame it on them because of the way they dressed? That's what the Watchtower does today. That they stick up for this God. The Watchtower religion is named after this God. This God. And just like it said in that one article, it's the same as what the nations did. They did the same thing that the nations did. It's exactly the same. And according to that article, that was evil. So if it was evil for the nations around them to do that, well, then it was evil for the Israelites to do it too. But that was at the order of Jehovah. That's the God that the Jehovah's Witnesses worship. But the only thing is, they don't know those scriptures are in the Bible because Watchtower never talks about it. They keep it secret. They never talk about verse 14. They never talk about that. They deliberately leave it out, and they've been doing that since 1935. Because I have the index going back to 1935, and you cannot find one place where they talk about 21 verse 14.